Hi there, Year 10. It's Miss Payne. I'm really sorry, but I'm poorly. I'm not going to be with you today. Excuse my terrible voice. It's now currently nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep, so I've decided that I'm going to still be with you in some way and do the lesson that I planned with you. Now, just before the break, you guys wrote down roughly the learning objective or the title for today. And so for anyone that wasn't here, can you please write down that in today's session, we'll be studying imagery, and you're just going to be examining the imagery that's being used in Act 3, Scene 2. So if the cover teacher could just hit the pause and let anyone who needs to copy down that information. Right, now here we go with our lovely retrieval quiz. Again, could I please ask that the cover teacher reads out these questions? Year 10, make sure you're answering in full sentences. I would suggest, lovely teacher, that they don't need any more than 5 minutes for this. So again, hit pause and go, guys. Now here's your answers, your retrieval practice responses. Now I'm expecting that you should get all 5 of those. I'll be taking your scores when I come back to school. Now, if you get any of those wrong, can you please make sure that you guys are writing down the answers now? Or let's see, who's going to get 5? Cam Long, you better be getting 5 today. Take a moment, feel free to pause if you need to. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of vocab boosting, but really you guys know these terms. What I want you to do is to make sure that you know the definitions really clearly for the next 3 words. If the cover teacher would like to pause for a moment, can you guys make sure that you've got the definitions for these words in your book if you need them? So the words are imagery, metaphor, and atmosphere, okay? Now remember, atmosphere can also be known as tone. I talk about those terms interchangeably quite often, so please do think about it. The atmosphere is really important. I'm always banging on, aren't I, about what changes and what stays the same, Year 10. And so think about how the atmosphere is a really important way to be able to discuss that. So again, pause, take a second, jot down anything you need. Right, now in this little bit, I want you to have a look at the 3 images, okay, 3 quite grisly pictures there. And with the cover teacher, and certainly with each other, I want you to discuss what these images remind you of. Now, just because I'm not in class today, I will still be expecting the same impeccable standard of behaviour. Now, if I've gone to the trouble of recording this at 3 o'clock in the morning, you will work hard for whoever you've got standing in front of you today. What I want you to consider is, do these images have anything in common? And also, what tone and atmosphere do you predict that Act 3, Scene 2 will create just based on looking at those images alone? So pause. Take a moment, jot down some ideas, and have some class-based discussion. So just before you guys read the scene, and I'll be expecting impeccable reading, lots of theatrics, entertain the teacher that you've got with you. I'm just going to give you the summary. You've all got these summary sheets in your books, but please make sure that you are understanding what you're about to read. So if the cover teacher wouldn't mind reading those out to save my voice, thank you. Take a moment. And now when you've done those, okay, you just press pause, and I want you to volunteer to read through Act 3, Scene 2. So take your time. I'll see you the other side. Pause and go. Right. So now you've read it, I'm going to ask you to use a whole page, okay, to duplicate this table in your exercise books. Now I've done a little bit of the work for you, but you know what I'm like, I do like to work you quite hard, and I'm going to expect that you will do it. So I want you to really interpret some of the language, some of the imagery that Shakespeare's using. Now for the last one, you're going to need to find that quote on your own. Remember, in the exam situation, you have to work really hard with extracts and do it. And also, I want you to really consider how you interpret it. How does Shakespeare achieve things? So, for example, with the first quote we've got, "We have scorched the snake, not killed it." All right. when we're thinking about our point that we've made there, is this idea that Duncan, although dead, causes Macbeth continual worry. He recognises that his kingship is vulnerable. Now, when we think about it, a snake is something that's quite predatory. And if we've just scorched the snake and not killed it, we've only wounded it. There is still a threat that is there. So when you consider this, it's showing that Macbeth has grave anxiety through the use of this metaphor, okay? There is a real sense of anxiety there. So when you consider the snake, it is a threat. We know then that events are going to take a darker turn because it needs to be killed. It needs to be silenced. So when you think about the effect then on the audience, it's going to make the audience feel quite anticipatory. They're going to be anticipating some sort of negativity that will come through. Remember that you are also the audience. You have to consider how this makes you feel, okay? I don't want any of those bolted on context comments like Jacobean audiences would feel. I mean, how do you know? You weren't there. So we don't have any of that, thanks. If you've got something relevant to say about Jacobeans, great. But also at the same time, be very mindful of that. Think about the effect on you. So that gives you a little heads up in what you've got to do. I'm now going to ask the supply teacher to pause. And what I would like you to do, guys, is in silence, and I mean silence, take good 15 to 20 minutes to do this, okay? I really want you to think it through. Pause and go. Now, I would normally say peer assess the partners table, but obviously we can't really pass books around in the time of COVID. So I'm going to ask you to do something else. If there is time at the remainder of this lesson, what I'm going to ask you to do, please, is I'm going to ask you to make some guided annotations in your book. Now, we'd normally go through these in class, so in your copies of the play. I'm going to ask you to focus on the big idea, okay? Using your table maybe to help you. But today's big idea was all about imagery. So what I'd like you to do, please, Year 10, is I'd like you to go through your play. And I would like you for this scene to make any little jottings, think about the devices that Shakespeare has used, and focus on the atmosphere, any key words, any lexical fields, patterns of words that create it. That should take you to the end of the lesson. If, however, you find that you've got time remaining, there's always something to do. Continue to update your character and theme notes. Okay, my lovelies.